What do you think, Millie Mae? What do you think? What do you think, Millie Mae? Tell me. Is your name Caroline? I don't think so. Millie Mae, what is your name?
Welcome to Millie's Gun Safe.
Hey, Millie Mae. Today I'm going to talk about one of my heroes that I'm really actually surprised about that he's one of my heroes. When I think back to my heroes or people I idolize, I go way back to my childhood days. I think about my bedroom that I had posters up on the wall of certain athletes, and the first one I think goes clear back to George Brett. And George Brett, he was a third baseman for the Kansas City Royals. We used to go up there for baseball games, like once a year or once every other year. And man, I just remember watching him. He was like who I wanted to be, And so then I think about other people that I tried to be playing in the yard. And I think every kid in the country at some point in the 80s tried to do a layup because we couldn't dunk the ball. We tried to do a layup with our tongue hanging out and look just like Michael Jordan, As with football, I don't think I had any like heroes, but there were, people in the neighborhood that we would try to score a touchdown with in the yard, and it was like Joe Montana to Jerry Rice kind of thing. And I don't know, these were my people that I admired. They were my childhood heroes, As I got older and the sports just kind of fell off and other things came into life. When I learned how to paint or was starting to learn how to paint, I admired Sigmund Freud's grandson. His name's Lucian Freud. He was a really great stylized artist, oil painter. And so even in my painting, in the earlier stuff, you can kind of see the influence that Lucian Freud had on the brush strokes, Within the past, 5 years, things have just really, really changed in life, and priorities change, and of course, the people that I admire change, and through Master Life, one of those the guy that wrote that was Avery T. Willis, and man, it was what a hero. I can't wait to get to heaven one day and just meet him and share stories, and it's just going to be pretty amazing. But then there's this other guy. I don't even know where this dude came from. It's just really rare and random, but I've known about him for at least 5 years it seems, and I keep going back to some of his quotes and his writings, and so this is my hero that I want to share with you today, and his name is C.T. Studd, and that's why in the title of this video is he wrote a book called The Chocolate Soldier, and C.T. Studd, S-T-U-D-D. It's kind of weird telling your daughter, hey, be a stud, but be a stud with two D's is kind of what this is all about. So who was this guy? And he was born in 1860 and he lived till 1931, but he was Britain's most famous cricketer. I don't even know a thing about the sport of cricket or cricketeering, or I don't even know how you talk about it really. And I thought about maybe going and do a little bit of research and trying to sound intelligent for you, but who cares? I don't know the game. It's got some sort of flat bat and the ball and weird scoring. And anyway, the point is about this guy in particular. He was Britain's most famous cricketer. And you're like, well, that's really not a big deal. That's like maybe a famous water poloist in the United States right now. No. Cricket was a huge game, or is a huge game. I'm not sure if it still is, but he was a big deal. So how can we compare this? It's like, take today, which by the time you watch this years down the road, it'll be somebody else. But one of the more famous athletes, I'm just going to use Tom Brady as an example. I mean, this guy has a net worth of like 250 million. His wife has a net worth of 400 something million. They're, very well to do. He's a tremendous quarterback in the NFL, and life is just really good. And so that is the kind of fame and notoriety, the popularity. I mean, wherever CT Stud went, the paparazzi also went. It was that kind of individual. And the one thing that I am really impressed with is he gave it all up. Think about Tom Brady right now and all that he has. He's still playing in the NFL. They say he's the greatest of all time. What if he just came home one day, went to his wife and kids, and like, I'm done with football. And that day's nearing, I'm sure, but that conversation. But then he followed it up with, and I'm going to go into the mission field, and I'm going to live the rest of my life for Christ. And not only would he say that, but he would actually do that. That is the kind of individual that C.T. Studd was. He hung it up. I mean, just stopped the game, and he went on the mission field. And he was his mission field was in China and India and Africa, and it was quite a big deal. But as I can only assume. I've read a little bit about Avery Willis and his in the biography that his children wrote, kind of put together for him. It is an extensive training and work, and then you're not only out there trying to lead people to Christ, but you're also leading and teaching other missionaries how to become a solid disciple for Christ, and so in the process, somehow, with a lot of reflection, C.T. Studd has really observed the nature of the Christian. Now, keep in mind, this was at the late 1800s, early 1900s, so I can't imagine what he would say about the Christians today, but there's really not much difference. And so he came up with this book, and he calls it The Chocolate Soldier. And it's a little brief book here. It's kind of my size, my speed. As a matter of fact, this book right here, the back half of it's a bunch of his poems that he wrote. So, it's a quick, easy read. So, like I said, that's my speed. But his reflection is the chocolate soldier is the chocolate Christian. And he was frustrated with the state of the Christians of the time. And I'll just kind of share with you how he chalks up what is a chocolate soldier. He says a Christian is a chocolate Christian, dissolving in water and melting at the smell of fire. Sweeties they are, bonbons, lollipops, living their lives on a glass dish or in a cardboard box, each clad in his soft clothing and a little frilled white paper to preserve his dear little delicate constitution. The chocolate soldier says, I go, sir, but then he goes not. They tell others to go, but they don't go themselves. And that is kind of the start of it. And it's such an interesting, I think the creative aspect of this, of him kind of comparing it to these desserts and the little bonbons and lollipops and the sweeties. It's just a wonderful, almost comical yet sad parallel. And so the reason I want to give this to you today is in the past videos, we've kind of focused a lot on other people. And I think now is the time to get serious about who you should be as a Christian and as a follower. And, we've talked about difficult people. We've talked about toxic people. We've tried to shine a little light on worldly Christians and spiritual Christians and the natural person. But you can go your entire Christian walk just looking and categorizing other people. This one's about you kind of reflecting and just kind of figuring out who you are, what you're not going to be, and what you're going to be. And so I think stud kind of sets that up. I want you to be a stud for Christ. I don't want you to be a chocolate soldier. And that's why I'm talking to you about these things. And you can truly see a chocolate soldier when the battle comes. And, you know, the heat of the battle, I love it when he says dissolving in water, you know, or melting at the smell of fire. The the chocolate soldier doesn't get into the depths of the battle even. They don't have to. And, you know, they talk about battles, they talk about the warfare, but they just let other people go fight them for them. And, you know, they'll go watch a battle, or they might get near a battle, but they never fight them. They'll just kind of urge others to fight those. They give excuses, even in their own life, of why they're losing the battle, you know. And there's always an excuse for why they're not winning the battle for Christ, you know. Chocolates are afraid to rebuke people, or afraid to put evil away from a friend, or get it out of their home, or get it out of a group. You know, they permit sin to remain. They permit sin to take over, and eventually sin will kill, you know. And they don't reveal the truth to a few people, or even to an entire group. They don't even reveal the entire truth. It's like they're just going to cover the sin because they don't want to ruffle anybody's feathers, or, you know, maybe they have to walk on eggshells at the house, but they're just afraid to bring forth the truth. Or if, you know, here's a quick indicator of a chocolate soldier is we're commanded to go out and to snatch the lost from the fire, but like they don't even go out and pursue because they are afraid of the rejection and the feelings they might have being rejected by a lost person, you know. And so that is where the chocolate soldier melts. That's not even a battle. That's just rejection. And so I can't imagine where all this would go if they were even close to a battle. But, you know, they would rather, here's how C.T. Studd says, they would rather sit among the sheepfold. They would rather leave their hard-pressed brothers in Christ to tackle the wolves by themselves, because we're chocolate Christians, or we're chocolate soldiers. They're just going to stay there in their comfortable spot in the church, which is what he talks about, these bonbons and lollipops and these sweeties. You go and it's like you can go get a donut somewhere and they're going to put it in a little cardboard box, and that donut's going to look like all the other donuts sitting around them. And that's kind of what the sheep sitting in amongst the fold is like, you know. A lot of the chocolate soldiers, they don't care enough to even know what's going on, to pray about it, or to help a brother out, or to help a sister out. They're like, we don't need to know the details. They just move on, you know. Stay neutral. Stay Switzerland. And so there's nothing that shows up in a chocolate so much as a little breeze or a disagreement amongst God's people. If that slight breeze of friction comes along, they're gone. They're done. And so these are all things that Studd talks about in his book here, you know. The saddest thing that I've seen is, you know, being in a battle and people that are around the individual and they're friends or they're in the group. When one of them is in a battle, the chocolate soldier or the chocolate Christian will use that as an excuse to just basically cut God out and drift back to their natural self pretty much, as far as like their behaviors. And And so they quit doing their quiet times. They quit going to church. They quit trusting in God, communicating with God, and they're just this chocolate mess that's melted on the floor of life. And basically they're purposeless for him, and they go back to their old ways. And it wasn't even their battle to begin with. Like he says here, it's at the smell of fire that they become like the chocolate soldier. And when you think about that, and you think about and read about Paul and how he was on a daily basis, it's like Paul faced death in his life for Christ. And these people, they're not even, they're just using that excuse that this happened in the church, so I'm done, and they're gone. And so that's what I don't want you to be. I don't want you to be one of these individuals that is always looking for an excuse not to do the work for Christ, or not allowing Christ to work through you, rather. And yeah, I was going to do this video yesterday, and it hit me today listening to our sermon this morning in church, and there were two quotes from today. Matter of fact, you can go to November 7th, 2021, First Baptist Bentonville sermon, and Chris Dixon gave an amazing sermon today on waiting. And so from that, he was talking about the circumstances around us, and whether it doesn't even have to be us. Like I was just talking about, you can have a friend that's near you going through a battle, and you're just smelling the fire coming from that battle, and you're using that circumstance as an excuse to hit the road and not do God's work. But those circumstances in life that are around us, they should develop you, Chris Dixon said, but not defeat us. And that is what a chocolate soldier faces. A circumstance that they're going to choose not to allow to develop, but to allow to defeat them. And what kind of blessing are you being to those around you if you're just melting in the fire? It's so funny that he runs with this idea of a chocolate, and he calls it a chocolate a la Reuben. And Reuben was one of those in the Bible, in the Old Testament, he would stay neutral. Instead of standing up for or against someone, and especially for truth, he would just stay neutral and go on about his life. And then they have chocolate do Balaam. And Balaam had this hearty desire to die a death of righteousness, but he was not willing to pay the price of a righteous life. And then there's chocolate Demas he wrote about, and Demas loved the present world, and he just wanted the easy path. He didn't want to put himself out there to go through any trials, adversity, or tribulation. And then you think about the spies that were sent out to the promised land, and they came back fearing the giants, like we cannot defeat them, and they made up all these excuses and turned all the people away from their confidence in the Lord, and went off, got sent to the wilderness for 40 years. These are chocolate soldiers in the Bible. Think of Jonah, called to go to Nineveh, and he chose not to. Had a chocolate moment, ended up in the belly of fish. Finally got his head together and ended up doing the job anyway. But these is there. It's notable. It's in the Word of God. I don't know. This C.T. Studd guy, I like a thinker, and that's what he is. And he just put it out there in a book that I would really like to know how many people know of this guy. But here, I'm just going to give some quotes from him. It says, "Some wish to live in the sounds of the church and the sound of a chapel bell." He's like, "I want to run a rescue shop within 1 yard of hell." That is not a chocolate soldier. He says, "You got one life to live, and it will soon pass. What's done for Christ only will last. And if Jesus Christ be God and died for me, then there's no sacrifice too good for me to make for him. And a light that shines the farthest shines the brightest near home. And here's a good one. The best cure for discouragement or for qualms is another daring plunge of faith. And it's just on and on like that. And he talks about what Christ wants. And he says, Christ does not want little nibbles of the possible. He wants grabbers of the impossible by faith, and by faith in the omnipotent and fidelity and the wisdom of an almighty Savior. That's what Christ is looking for. And every true Christian, he says, is a soldier, and a soldier of Christ. He said the one problem that we have is that heroism is lost. You know, a Christian soldier is a hero. And he says par excellence, and that was like a phrase that I've never heard in my life. And par excellence is like, it's a better version of all the others that are of the same kind. And that's what he's telling you to be. Every Christian is a hero, par excellence. You know, it makes me think of like Mount Rushmore. I remember had the opportunity to lead or substitute in for a Sunday school class once, and one of the lessons I just got finished listening to, I think Paul Feinbaum or something like that. But it was like, who's on the Mount Rushmore of the SEC coaches, you know, and like this huge conversation busted out, and it's just like, man. You know, I kind of went down the road a little ways, but then I was like, yeah, it's just SEC football, you know? And like, who's on my Mount Rushmore of mentors or discipleship, you know? And I could sit there and real quickly, I could come up with who's on my Mount Rushmore, you know, going from my first mentors, and I had Steve Gaddis and Bill Barbary and Steve Holmes. You know, these men stepped up at that time. And then, you know, your granddad, he's definitely on the Mount Rushmore. And I'm probably going to have to expand Mount Rushmore, you know, and thank God for that. But your mama, and she's on my Mount Rushmore as well. And these are people that are par excellent. They are above everybody else of the same kind. You know, your Brady. This lady can pray, man. And it's like if I had a Mount Rushmore of prayer, Birdie's on my Mount Rushmore of prayer, you know. And that is, not only do you want to have a Mount Rushmore, but you want to be on somebody's Mount Rushmore. You want to be their greatest of all times. You want to be their hero for Christ, modeling that. You want to be par excellent, and you want to be braver than the bravest. That's what God is calling us to do. Not melting that, just the being near a fire. He wants you in the fire, just like those three that went into the fire and they came out not even smelling of smoke. That is what the Lord is calling you to do. Studd said that God was never a chocolate manufacturer and never will be. God's men and women are always heroes. Noah, man, scrutinized, scoffers walking by on a daily basis, and he became a hero, I think, if you go and read the story, you know. Other heroes notable are Abraham, Moses, Paul, and David. I mean, David was such a hero that when he practiced being a hero, he practiced with bears and lions. You know, what are we doing today that even compares? You know, and so I'll read a couple more quotes here. He says that he has little names for these Christian soldiers. He said that God is looking for the paragons of pluck, the daredevil desperados for Jesus, gamblers for God, and the people will shout, "They're fools, and they are madmen." And yes, for Christ's sakes, they are madmen, you know. And then he says difficulties, dangers, disease, death, or division don't deter any but chocolates from executing God's will. When someone says there's a lion in the way, the real Christian promptly replies, "That's hardly enough inducement for me. I want a bear or two beside it to make it worth my while to go." And he talks about the fanatics. He says chocolates are very fond of talking loud and long against someone they call fanatics. It's like they belittle, those that are fanatics for Christ. Today we call them extremists. And as though there were any dangers of being a Christian fanatic nowadays. God's real people have always been called fanatics. Jesus was called mad, and so was Paul. So was Whitefield, Wesley, Moody, and Spurgeon. No one has graduated far in God's school who has not been paid the compliment of being called a fanatic. And that is what Stud was. I mean, only a fanatic would leave just the comfort and the respect that came with his public fame, Only a fanatic would do that. And, he says that real fanatics are as rare as the dodo, But God's people, they've always been called fanatics. And I remember reading a Mark Batterson book called All In. And Batterson says, and this is what a fanatic is, they're all in for the all in all. And that is what you need to be. I mean, you need to be this kind of individual that's not afraid, that you don't melt in the moment, those circumstances that are going on all around you, that you stay strong in the Lord and you do not melt. So how do you avoid being a chocolate soldier or a chocolate Christian? And the first thing is you need to really, it's not just the circumstances around you. It is, a lot of it has to do with the people around you. If you have someone who's discipling you, the first thing you want to do is make sure that they're not a chocolate soldier themselves, And then you want to take a look at your pastor and you want to really evaluate what this guy is doing. And is he a chocolate soldier? Is he just amongst the sheep, or is he in the game? Is he on fire for the Lord and not melting at the fire that life throws at him? That's the kind of pastor you need. You want to find one that's totally on fire, and not one that's just lukewarm or having a little bit of heat. Yeah, you want the best. You want to surround yourself with the best to equip you for being the best for God. That's what you're wanting. And remember, par excellence. You want to be better for the Lord than all those around you. It's not necessarily a competition, but you want to set the bar, And that bar is excellence. And you don't just want to get up on Sunday mornings and go through the motions, sit in the Sunday school class, sit in big church, go out the door and I'm Christian. No. And then this kind of goes along with the not only being a sayer but a doer. Stud, he just touches real. I wish he could come over and just sit down here at the table and talk about this stuff, because he was talking about praying and acting. And he said prayer is good, but it's not a substitute for obedience, And I was like, that just makes a whole lot of sense, but it's not enough for me to totally let it seep in and digest, I'm like, and he was talking about the church, and he says it's great to have prayer meetings, and we need to have prayer meetings, but we need to have as many action meetings set up and possibly more action meetings than we do have prayer meetings. And I was like, that is pretty phenomenal. And so it's not just being a sayer or not just being a prayer, it is also being a doer and putting those things into action. And I don't know, man, your hero right now in the Bible is Queen Esther. And she had a moment. Imagine, like, go back and read this story. Imagine what would happen if Queen Esther in that moment was a chocolate soldier. What would have play that movie? What are the results? No, she wasn't a chocolate soldier. She was a fanatic. She was the bravest of the bravest at that time, you know? And her words, if I perish, I perish. And why is she perishing? For the people. She had to be, at that moment, a hero, not a chocolate soldier. So what does this hero look like? A hero knows God, and he trusts God, and he obeys God, and gets his strength from God. That's who a hero is. You know, Revelation 3:21 is, I feel like that is the reward for the hero, you know. And I want you to go and I want you to read Revelation 3:21. And there are different versions, and some talks about to the one who is victorious or the one who overcomes. You know, that the warrior, the hero, has the victory. It doesn't say the one who melts, the one who just kind of curls up in a ball. It says the one who overcomes. And it says, he will sit with me on my throne. And man, that is the reward that is waiting for you in heaven after this life, after these moments, after these circumstances that are all around you. You get to sit on his throne because you overcome, you are victorious, you conquer in those moments when the circumstances around you only cause you to trust in him and to grow your faith in him. Chocolate soldier will not experience that at all. And that is what I want you to be. I want you to be a stud. I want you to be a fanatic for the Lord. No matter what people say, no matter what goes on around you, all those senses that we talked about, what the natural person deals with, all of it, it doesn't matter. And what matters is if you are like Queen Esther in those moments and in those big battles of life, where you say that you don't care about anything but obedience in the Lord, and if you perish, you perish. But there is a reward right after that, Millie Mae, and that is what I want you to do. I love you. Man, I hope, I can only hope that one day we sit and get to talk a little bit more about this, and especially with you being a believer. But I love you, and I want the best for you. Bye-bye.